Hey, good evening, everyone, to all Radio Pani Puri listeners, our viewers, and our viewers everywhere who are going to be joining in shortly to listen to a very special program which is debuting today. Please welcome Dr. Serena Wadhwa to this show. She is going to be the host, and it's a wonderful, exciting program. We are delighted to be hearing directly from Dr. Serena. Welcome, Dr. Serena. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing? Welcome, everyone.
Good. Yes. Dr. Serena, the pendulum, it's so exciting to know about it. Our listeners, our viewers, everyone maybe is excited to know more about it too. Please do share as our debut program today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, I want to thank you very much for having me and being able to kind of share, this new venture. And I'm grateful to all of you that are listening in and watching and, maybe watching it in the future. I want just to give a little background about myself because there might be some new people that don't know of me and, kind of set the stage for how this really came about. So my background has primarily been in mental health and substance use disorders. I've done a radio Panipuri show before the pandemic, where I had guest speakers, Paths to Wellness, talk about different approaches to wellness and being able to find, different tools, different approaches, different strategies to optimize wealth and wealth and health. Of course, why not? And so I'm a little nervous about this today. I've been planning this, for several months, and I'm sitting here writing a script about what to talk about, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is like real talk. So you're just going to get me and all my anxiety in this moment. But so anyway, so when the pandemic hit, the show obviously stopped because I wasn't able to get guest speakers to be with me so that we could do the interview and just kind of explore these different approaches. So my background, I'm in academia right now. I am an associate professor. I work as a clinical therapist. I've done a lot of workshop and presentations in the field. Have spanned a couple decades, working with different levels of mental health issues and substance use issues. And so, my life at the point, was very complete for the most part. I had great social connections, great family connection, was really connected with myself, being able to do things that were important to me. And also, make an impact on the world at the same time. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit, that really just kind of stopped everything. And so the isolation, the profound sense of loneliness that came up was a very new experience for me back in 2020. And, I wasn't able to do the things that allowed me to maintain connection and maintain a balance in my life. And, that's kind of, where this pendulum kind of came from, was recognizing that I went from like one extreme to the other, this connection, having this, being able to ground myself in reality, practice my own spirituality, have friends, the health, the wealth, the work, the wellness, all the different components that frequently is talked about in terms of quality of life. And then a lot of that was when it was shut down. Basically, I couldn't travel, I couldn't see my friends, my family. I mean, Zoom is one thing, but there really is something to physical contact, just being physically in the presence of other people, that makes a difference. And part of that is energy too. You pick up on energy from other people. And I know that's something that sustains me and my mental health. And so when the pandemic hit, and really cut off. Of course, in the beginning, it was nice, to kind of be able to be at home for a while and enjoy it. And, but after a few months of just constantly hearing like all the tragedy that was happening in the world, and then there was more things happening because of, different disparities were coming up, and a lot of things in the world were becoming more evident that we don't usually talk about or look at. So as the pandemic continued, and events in Chicago were canceled, and social distancing became a thing, and wearing masks, and really having to adjust to a new normal, so to speak. My own sense, my own anxiety, my own sense of isolation, my own sense of loneliness came up, and it was a very profound experience for me. And as I went through that process, I had some health issues. I did get COVID, and that also impacted, the pain issues that I have as well. Not being able to kind of differentiate. And so in the last few years, it's been trying to recalibrate, finding out what my new normal is. And so the pendulum is really kind of the birthing process of that live experience, that experience that I've lived through. It's been very interesting to go from one extreme to the other, because in reality, things are very different. It's easy to kind of ground yourself and do the things that are important, which I was able to do, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And even though you have things, I mean, I know I had things too that I wanted to do, but being out in the physical world sometimes, with time limits, that's a very real world experience. And especially then when it would be, when everything was shut down, I had more time on my hands because I was getting more work done at home, but then it became more work was getting done. So it was hard to connect with friends and family the way that that keeps me feeling well, and, allows my health and wellness to be optimized. I wasn't able to travel or do meditation or things that, in a community setting, because community is very important. And so I did meditate on my own, and I developed a practice which really helped. And yet at the same time, I missed that community. So there was this kind of, extreme happening in my life, that, I was having this very real world experience, trying to find a spiritual connection, trying to find that community connection, trying to find that, love, compassion, kindness, the spiritual principles, universal laws that we talk about or know about. And really just going from one extreme to the other, back and forth. And at some point it was really just, I remember back in 2014, I went to my first ashram, my first meditation retreat that I had. I was gone for about maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks at that time. I had a profound experience there. And yet, because I wasn't able to really connect with somebody and process it or talk about it, or even understand it for that reason. And I think that's part of that human being pendulum is, how do you really understand your own experience in the context of a larger world? The reality of your experience, and then broadening it out to, how do I make this part of the community, or how does it relate to the community? How does it relate to what's important to me, my purpose, or, just being in the world, out in the world in general. So I had this, experience, and then, because I didn't understand it in the context of my life, I found myself kind of swinging to the other side. Like I became much more involved in travel, much more involved in materialistic things, stuff that I never really saw myself as being. But again, that's part of that pendulum process is, this human being experience. And so, for a few years, actually, up until the pandemic, it was kind of leaning towards one side of that pendulum. And when the pandemic hit, it went completely the opposite direction. So I was grounded in reality. I was more individualistic, thinking more, doing more material things, more, things that I normally would not do. But yet, because I was trying to find the context of this spiritual experience, it was just a way that we go about doing stuff. I mean, I've clients, I've worked with students, I've worked with, my friends, my family, other people that I just talk in different communities about how this process occurs. And so when the pandemic hit, it gave me an opportunity to be able to tune in, just kind of tune into my own experience and be able to find a context of what was going on. But yet at the same time, physically, mentally, emotionally, I was also craving and wanting some of that connection, right? And novelty, new experiences. And when you're in such a routine like that, it's very challenging to make it different when you are isolated. Um, and so, when opportunities came on, I jumped on them, and then I swung the other way. And then the last couple of years really has been about recalibrating myself, and that's what the pendulum is really about. I mean, if you think about it, a pendulum is really an item, that kind of swings back and forth, right? And then at some point in time, it eventually settles, and it finds its own balance. It works both in reality and gravity, a real law and then a spiritual law. There's a lot of beliefs behind it that there is some energy that's connected with it. And I think, for myself, at least, that's been part of my experience, at least in the last 3 to 4 years. And I know that just in talking with other people, that's also been something that they've experienced, to not necessarily to the same degree as I have, but definitely relatable. So looking at similarities is what really became a focus for me. We all have these different experiences that we go through, and finding a common ground is what keeps us connected. And I know for a long time, just looking at how different my experience was what I was focused on. And then, when this pendulum came about, when the active pendulum came about, my goal, my wish was really to find, more of, what is my new recalibration, my new optimal middle path, so to speak, or how do I get the best of both worlds? Because I think ultimately we all want that quality of life, and that's kind of what this podcast is really going to focus on, is looking at kind of that human being experience. The human part is our physical body, the reality that we live in, the limitations that we have as being human. Like, for example, I'm 5 foot, so I have a lot of limitations, being that short. And at the same time, though, spiritually speaking, when we go to the other extreme, there's a lot more abundance that I can feel, that I can provide for, that I can share with other people. So that's kind of the origin of the pendulum, and really just keeping it grounded in being authentic, and looking at what are some of the things that people struggle with in this human being experience. The pandemic still has had residual effects on people. I mean, and so looking at how do we go about finding practical solutions and possibilities, and how do we connect and reconnect, because sometimes people are struggling with that. I know that was anxiety provoking when we got back from the pandemic. I did a Vipassana meditation, and it reminded me a lot of that. Where in Vipassana meditation, we sat in silence for 10 days. And when we had the opportunity to talk with other individuals that were in the community, it was like, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to do. And I think kind of, that's been, we're kind of on the tail end of that from the pandemic. I know that's been my experience. And that's the origin of the pendulum process and the pendulum itself. So I'm hoping that makes sense, and and brings to the table something different. But that's kind of the origin of it. That's my background. I mean, I have, and also I think part of it is just the lived experience, and having that academic and clinical background. I know that other people share elements of this, and that's part of what I want to bring and talk about. And I think part of it, Pramila, is I'm going to also give you a lot of credit, because Yoniki Bath, doing those monologues too, that was an experience too. And so it was great to be able to start of that. So I don't know if people have any questions. I'm getting some messages, and I don't know if my internet is not working or what's happening, but I don't know where you want to go from there. But that's
I
the
think,
the
yeah, great
groundwork.
introduction, yeah, Dr. Serena. Really, I think a lot of people have experienced something similar, and today what you did was put them into words. The experience is inside them, but when you actually
Thank
articulate them, it makes complete sense. It makes more sense. So, pendulum. Everyone in life has that pendulum clicking. Sometimes it goes to one end, then to the other. We need to make a proper
yes.
balance to it. So, Dr. Serena,
Right.
you mentioned this is, the introduction today. You need to bring in more of these topics. I'm sure, anyone watching, viewers, they will be listening to it. They will be understanding. They will be comprehending, and then say, "Hey, this is something I feel too. I would like to learn more
Yeah.
about it." So I'm sure more of these subtopics will come up, and I personally am excited to hear more about you, about
Thank
what
you.
your experience were. So more of the pendulum for me, at least.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I am looking forward to, I know this is going to be relatively a short episode for today, just to kind of bring the pendulum to life, so to speak. But I'm willing to share my email, because I know the recording will be made available, in a couple different social medias and a few of them. So I don't know. I'm going to put my email and my cell number. Do I put that in the comments, or do I put that in
Yes,
the
please.
chat?
In the chat, it will be available into all the social media channels.
Okay. So I'll put it in both. It says, because it looks like I have a private chat and a comment. And I know today we have a storm of all days. I was like, how pendulum like is that?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect environment for the pendulum, actually.
I was just like, oh, of course, that's going to affect the real world experience of my internet. Trying to be so profound. All right, so I don't know if you can see that, but I will also put it. Okay, it says that I need to connect my YouTube. So I did put it in the private chat. If you don't mind
Okay.
copying it and putting it in the comments, that would be great. I know I've been getting some texts that they're having some trouble getting in. So I am wondering if that's the internet, or I may have shared the wrong link. I know I was anxious about that, and that's okay, because this makes it a little bit more private right now until it gets public, and then I can just do what I got to do.
No, no, not, yeah, no worries at all. And I'm sure we'll be having more of these, Dr. Serena. So I know our viewers, you have information for Dr. Serena. Feel free to contact her with any subtopics, any special topics you would like to hear more. And you also have a contact number. You can contact her directly for any questions about what the program is, what the intent is, and how she will be able to be assisting us in managing the pendulum. So, thank you so much, Dr.
Great.
Serena, and
All right. Thank you.
stay safe, everyone. It's a stormy night tonight.
Yeah, it is. Take care. Thank you.